Hello, this is Ole Henrik Skjelstad, and in this tutorial we are going to learn how to edit Milky Way images my way. And this image was taken a few weeks ago when we had a clear sky. If we have a look at the histogram, we can see I was able to achieve a relatively even histogram. Some clip blacks, but that we will be able to fix pretty easy. And I always try to achieve an even histogram when I'm out shooting in the night. I do not care much about the eyes, so I just adjust it according to how dark it is. And sometimes I will also shoot additional exposures for the foreground at lower ISO and perhaps a couple of minutes long. We have some distractions here which we need to remove in Photoshop, including that boat. As we can see, the Milky Way is pretty washed out. The boat here is a bit overexposed, so we have a lot to do. And when we are done, hopefully we will get to that. Okay, let's start adjusting our raw file. First of all, I will try to get rid of any black clippings, open up the shadows a bit, something like that, I guess. In this one I will take down the exposure, something like that. And it wasn't super dark when I took this image, so we have some nice blues in the sky. If I'm shooting at ISO 10,000 or 12,000 or even 16,000, usually there's not much colors in the sky, so then I will adjust the white balance, push some blues into the image, perhaps some magenta tones to make it a little warmer, something like that. I don't think I want to have so much magenta in this one, only a few stops like that. I usually add a little vibrance, and of course there is noise in an image like this. So when I apply noise reduction, I usually go to about between 30 and 40 depending on the image and the ISO. So something like that will work. And of course there is color noise in an image like this. You can see it here, some magenta cast in the shadows. So I will take that one up a little. It is also possible to go to camera calibration and add a touch of green into the shadows like this to get rid of magenta or reddish color casts in the shadows. We will also apply a little sharpening. Around 50 is my default. I usually take down details, and we will do some masking. Press down the Alt key and just move the slider, something like that. There is some vignetting in the corners, so we go to lens corrections manual, and I guess around 30 perhaps will be fine here, something like that. And I will also take up the midpoint a little. Okay, there we are. Back to basics. remove chromatic aberration. I think also I would like to take down the highlights a little there. Okay, we are almost done in Lightroom. We have to try to get some more tonal contrast in the Milky Way, and we will do that with the help of the brush tool. We will add a great amount of clarity, some noise reduction since clarity adds noise, and we have a reasonable okay flow. So I will just brush over here to bring out the Milky Way a little more. We will continue to work the Milky Way in Photoshop, of course. Yeah, done. And I don't think I want to do anything more here. So I just right click on the image, edit in Photoshop. And you will have to wait a few seconds while the image is opening up here. There we are. And Control 0 to fill up the working space. The very first thing I like to do is to add some midtones contrast in an image. But before I do that, I think we will get rid of these distractions. And hence I will duplicate the background layer, zoom in, and just use the lasso tool and make selection around these. Go to image, edit, fill, and content aware. Okay, gone. And we will do the same thing here, just using the regular lasso tool to make a selection and go to edit, fill. Okay. And Photoshop does a fairly good job. There's some things here which we can fix, of course, and then we can just use the patch tool. See, Control D to deselect. I don't know why it added those black spots. But you see, when Photoshop did its thing, it didn't produce any stars, so I'll just use the patch tool to get back some stars. Control D, get rid of that one. Okay, and next, lasso tool again, and we will make a selection around this branch and edit, fill. Thank you. And I think this one we just clone out. Control D to deselect that selection, clone tool. I think I will go to maximum flow. And sample from here. Just get rid of that one. Oopsie. Something like that. Control 0, and we have Also this one, which is a bit disturbing. I think I just going to use the clone tool to fix that one. Sample from here, I guess. Just drag down. Good. Control 0 again, and then we have this boat. That one will entail some more work to get it nice. But I'll do the same thing. Lasso tool, make a selection. And go to Edit, Fill, and Content. We are okay. And Photoshop does a fairly good job at removing that boat. And we do need to do some cloning here to get things completely fine. Or we can just continue to, or try to continue to use content aware and see what happens. Yeah, Control D and do it again and do it again. We won't spend much time on this. This is not the most important part of this tutorial. So just so you get an idea, I will just do some quick at a fairly low flow. Too much. So something like that. I will be, of course, I will be much more careful when I'm working, preparing an image. So we're just doing it rapidly and something like that. Yeah. It's often wise to use various flow rates when using the clone stamp tool to get a pleasing result. Okay, I won't spend any more time on this now, but you get an idea. And next step is going to Tony Kuiper's luminosity masks, which you can order at goodlight.us, I think. Or just Google Tony Kuiper and luminosity mask. They do not cost much, and they're totally vital for my processing. So I will go for levels, expanded, midtones. You probably call it that one midtones 2 or something like that in his new panels, which I haven't bothered to download. Okay, double click, darken the midtones. Yeah, perhaps something like that, and make the brightest midtones a bit brighter. There we are. I have to make a mask in order to separate sky from land. That is perhaps one of the most important things I do when I'm processing my Milky Way images. And in order to do so, we need a visible stamp layer. Control, Shift, Alt, E. Then we will go to Image, Adjustments, and Threshold. And this one will help us make a selection. And as far as I can tell, we have a reasonably good selection already. If not, it's possible to move this slider to nail it even further. But I think something like that will work. And I click OK. And the white will be our mask, so I have to fill in with white here, and the easiest way to do that is to go here, right click, rectangular marquee tool, and oops, Control D. There we are. And since white is my background color, I will hit Control Delete and fill it with white. And we will do the same thing for the ground. Okay. And foreground, black as our foreground color, and Alt Delete to fill it with black. Control D. There are also some white parts here which we need to include, so I just go to my brush tool, flow to max, and with black as my foreground color I just paint in there. Oh, an area here too. I shift X, white as foreground color, and just paint here as well. Yeah, I think that's okay. Control 0. Next I go to channels and Control click to activate the mask. And now I can delete this visible stamp layer. I don't need it anymore. And I will zoom in and try to fix that part. So I need a layer with pixels, so I go to my background copy and I choose my magic wand tool, pressing down the shift key and adding to the selection. Yeah. Control 0 and refine edge. Yeah, it looks nice to me. I click OK. And I will save this selection. So I go to channels and click on the save icon. Of course I can name it if I want to do that. Double click and write sky, for instance. Enter. While my selection is selected, I will add a folder and a mask. So this is my sky group. I will add another folder. Pressing down the Alt key, I can now move my mask over here and Control I to invert it and call this one for land. So now we have two folders, each targeting different parts of the image. Sky and land. So I will start out with my sky. And I really need to bring out the Milky Way. And this is how I'm going to do this. We need the elliptical marquee tool. Pressing down the Alt key. And we will make a selection something like that, I guess. Right click inside it and go to transform selection. Turn it around. Move it perhaps a little tad to the right. Yeah, I think that looks okay. And next we need a mask to mask this. So hit Q, quick mask, filter, blur, gaussian blur. We need to feather this one. Around 400 pixels is usually what I go for. And okay. hit Q again to go out of this selection, quick selection mode, and we will choose curves and just take it up a little notch. We get some light and glow to the Milky Way. We can go back and refine this afterwards. Next, I will control click on this mask to activate it again. Go to curves again, but this time I'm going to invert the mask, control I. And now I will push things down. Look at this. So the Milky Way suddenly begins to stand out from the rest. Something like that. And I will control click on this mask once again. Curves. Now I will add a regular S curve to bring out the Milky Way even more. Something like that. Let's see how this affected the sky. Pretty much, I would say. And I could of course go down to my first and make things a little brighter. It's a matter of taste, of course. And when we took down the exposure here, make it darker, the colors will usually or of course increase. So if you feel the colors are too strong, set the blend mode to luminosity, for example. And I didn't like what happened there, so I go back to normal. And if we feel the colors are a bit too blue, we can add another curves. Go to the blue channel and add some yellows, which gives a warmer color to the sky also. There we are. When we darkened the sky, we will perhaps get some no, it doesn't look that bad. I can live with that. Usually we can get some haloing or other things that are not so pleasing, so that we have to use the clone stamp tool or darken this part of the image, which I usually do with the help of a midtones adjustment layer of some sort. It's pretty difficult to get a super accurate mask when we are shot at a pretty high ISO and we're wide open. Things are not super sharp exactly. Did I mention that I swiped my headlamp across the foreground? Well, I did, and that's the reason why it is so bright and that we have such great colors going on in the foreground. I would prefer now to do some more midtones work in the land area. So I will go to the channels panel and I will load a wide midtones from Tony Kuiper's panel and a shadows darks. And I will use the shadows darks to protect the darker tones. So first control click on the midtones and then control alt click on shadows darks to subtract the from the midtones. Next I will again pick a curves and we will take it down a little bit, something like that. just to get some midtones contrast. Let's see. Yeah. Well, never paint directly on a mask. You will ruin the mask if you want to do some adjustments. Do this. Control G, put it in a group, add a layer mask, and paint on the layer mask. So perhaps I felt that this area got a bit dark. I can just paint on the mask and brighten it up again. Make the transition a bit smoother. Something like that. So let's see how far we have gotten. Alt, click, that's where we started. We have gotten this far. There are some stains on the boat, these yellow stains, which I do not like much. And we will not spend any time on fixing that, but you can use the clone stamp tool, pick from other places on the boat and try to get rid of those. Or we can use the content up here, or we can paint with white. Many ways of getting rid of these ugly stains. But we will not do anything about that now. I would like now to add some blur to the image, a Norton effect. Since we have a folder here, we need a new layer. And Shift Control Alt T, visible stamp layer. Go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And since this is a 20 megapixel camera, I will go to around 33 pixels. Okay. Opacity around 15%. That's enough. Google's ColorFX Pro has now become free, as far as I know, and ColorFX Pro is vital for my processing. So we will start out to bring back some detail after having blurred everything, to use tonal contrast. Tonal contrast brings back some of the detail we lost when we added to the blur, and it will add contrast across the image. There we are. These values are way too much. Highlights, my default is around 8-9, same with midtones. Shadows 5-6, saturation around 0. There we are. And no clipped blacks, no clipped highlights, otherwise we can protect shadows here and protect highlights there. Now let's see how this looks. Yeah. Brought back some detail, and we can also see how it added pop to the Milky Way. Add filter. I also would like to add a pro contrast. Add a fair amount of dynamic contrast and see what happens. And still no clipped blacks or clipped highlights, otherwise we could have fixed it here. Let's see. Yeah, I feel it adds too much light here and too much light here, and then we can just go to control points, minus, make that one darker, minus again, make that one darker. And we can click on this arrow, and here we have the control points we have added. And we'll see how they affect the image. There we are. You see they are also bleeding a little into this area. That's okay. And we can make it larger if we want to. That one also, make it larger so that it affects a greater area. The control points are extremely handy when we work with the ColorFX Pro. Compare from here to this. And I actually don't think I want to do anything more here. Perhaps we can, we can add darken light in center. It's a filter I often use. Let's see what happens. Corners are way too dark. So we will fix border luminosity. And the middle is too bright, so we will take down center luminosity. Let's check it out. Yeah, does a great job in focusing on this part of the image. So I click, when I'm done here, I click OK. There we are. I will group these two layers, the blur layer and the ColorFX Pro layer. Shift click, Control G, and before and after. We will also add a little more glow in this area, so I add a blank layer. I will set it to soft light, go to my brush, press down the Alt key and pick a color from here. There we are. Click here and make it brighter. There we are. Set the flow rate to 100%. Fairly large and soft brush. And just click. And we see our black tones have also become yellow. So I double click on here, which brings up this dialog box. Go to underlying layer, press down the Alt key and move this slider to the right in order to protect the blacks. If I had moved both, I wouldn't have had any feathering. Do you see back there how harsh the transitions are? But by pressing down the Alt key and just taking this one, you will get some very nice feathering. Click OK. So you can add glows if you want to. And we can also add some greens to the sky. Go to the curves, go to the green channel, lift it up, then Control I to invert it, and we will use a gradient, the circular one, and just, oh sorry, we need white as our foreground color. Hit X and swipe. And swipe. This is evidently far too much, so just take down the opacity, so just a little amount of greens, which sense gives an idea about air glow. So that's one way you can do. Before we fix these wide angle distortions, we need to sharpen the image and also have some noise reduction. Because I have a mask now that's perfect for the sky and for lenses, if I begin to fix any of these wide angle distortions now, my mask we made in the beginning, this one, will be useless and I will have to do everything again. So I fix distortions at last, the last thing I do. I still feel that the Milky Way could have been more prominent. So I will go to my sky folder and I will make a duplicate and I will take it to the top. And that's way too much, of course it is. So we can just reduce the opacity until we are happy with it. Yeah, that's better in my eyes. The Milky Way is more pronounced and the sky is darker. Better contrast. I also feel the boat is a bit too bright. So there are various ways we can do that. We can use selective color and burn some blacks into it. Or we can try to use off-tonic hypers masks. I will try light slides, curves, which target the brightest tones in an image. Double click and pull down. Yeah, that made the boat better. So I will hit Ctrl G and add a dark mask, Alt and click. That will hide what we just did, and then I can brush it in with white as my foreground color. Just paint in, darkening the boat because it was too bright, in my opinion. Let's see. Yeah. I hit X of black and just clean up a little around here because this bled into the water also. There you are. And Control 0. So how far have we gotten? We started here. Now we are here. We have a strong glow, a more pronounced Milky Way, and the boat is looking better. Okay. Next thing we will do now is to add some noise reduction. So since this is a folder, I need a new layer and Shift Control Alt E to make it into a stamp layer, and I use Topaz denoise for my noise reduction on night images, and I usually set it to raw moderate, and that looks fairly good to me. Now click OK. I do not have a super fast computer exactly, so things take time. There we are. Now I will go to channels, control click on my sky mask, and just add a mask to my noise reduction layer. And I will zoom close to see how things look. Perhaps too much, so we can just reduce the opacity a little. Yeah, much better. And if we want to add some noise reduction to the water as well, we can just go and find the brush tool, and with white as our foreground color, we can just paint in the water where it's very noisy. Something like this. I won't go over the entire image, I will just give you an idea. Perhaps I could have reduced the opacity a bit also. This is maybe a bit too much. So we can go down on the opacity on this side. And take out some noise here as well. And there we have a dead pixel. And I will fix that later. Control 0. Next, sharpening. And I do not want to sharpen my sky, so I can use my mask again. And when it comes to sharpening, I have an action which you can download from vibrantshot.com, the 16-bit sharpening action. So I just pick it and click play. And it does a great job in sharpening the image without introducing sharpening halos. My default is radius 10 and threshold around 14. But this you can adjust as you find pleasing. And I click OK, and it will add a surface blur, which usually takes some seconds before it sharpens the image. So this is my favorite way of sharpening almost all images, exactly because this action does not add any weird haloing. There we are. I'm going to go to channels again, pick my control, click on the sky mask, click on the mask icon here, and next control I to invert the mask. So with that it only sharpens my ground, and with also of course sharpen the lake, so it's possible to mask out that if one want to just use a brush with black as foreground color and mask out. Let's see. If the effect is too much, take down the opacity. It varies from image to image which opacity I go for, but I think this one I can use around 60. There we are. Yes. And now I'm going to try to do something about this wide angle distortion. We can do some warping, of course, but let's show you guys another way of doing this. We need a visible stamp layer. And then we go to filter and liquify. And these are the settings: pressure around 56, density 72, rate 0. And that one must be chosen. And you can adjust the brush size Alt right click and move the cursor to the right or to the left. And then I can fix stuff without having to warp. We can zoom close to see if this looks relatively intelligent. And yes, it does. Okay. Choose the brush again. Just try to fix these tops. Yeah. And Control 0. And we can also, of course, if we want to, pick a large brush, fix the boat. It's better to use a large brush than a small one. And of course, if I do not like what I did now, I can fix it back. But just to give you some ideas on what is possible with the help of the Liquify tool. And I also perhaps would like to make the Milky Way broader without using the warp tool, just stretch things a little. Varying the size of the brush and make the Milky Way more dominant in the image. Yeah, perhaps something like that. And when we are done, click OK. So before and after. And look how the Milky Way now occupies much more of the frame. And this may not be my final version of this image. I will perhaps let it rest a day or two and see if there are anything else I would like to do to the image. Perhaps I feel that the Milky Way still is a bit too weak, and then I can add another visible stamp layer. Shift Control Alt E, and I will go to Filter and to Camera Raw Filter. Choose the brush tool, clarity, contrast not too much, some noise reduction, and just brush to make it even more strong or more prominent in the frame. Okay. Before and after. Before and after. Of course, we can reduce the opacity if we feel the effect is too much. We can add a mask, white mask, and with black as our foreground color at a fairly low opacity, we can just perhaps mask out along the edges a little. Before and after. So this is where we started, and this is where we are now. And only your imagination sets borders on what you can do with this image. You can dodge and burn, water, make it more glowy. You can dodge and burn the Milky Way, add some more darks in between here to make it the whites stand out even more. For instance, just a regular new layer, set it to soft light. Sorry. And with black as our foreground color. And now I prefer flow, very low flow around 6 perhaps. And we can just, with a fairly small brush, just paint in some dark here. To add contrast to the Milky Way. And we can of course change the foreground color, set it to white, and add some dodge the Milky Way, just add some whites here and there, make it stand out even more. And just one last thing. Have you ever tried to go to channels and pick, for instance, the green channel? Control click to activate it. Pick a curve and do an S curve through the green channel to add contrast to the image. Like this. Let's have a look at the histogram, what happened now. We made the image darker without clipping any blacks, so in a sense we worked on the midtones, and we can set this one to luminosity so that it doesn't affect the colors that much. Well, thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you learned a few things which can help you improve your editing of the Milky Way. So again, thanks, and go out there and have some fun.